Well, it's been an interesting time for the U.S. Senate. Florida's senators have been debating or casting critical votes on a Supreme Court justice, health care reform, money for space flight, and billions of dollars in economic stimulus money. Among the top Republicans running to replace Senator Mel Martinez, former Florida House Speaker Marco Rubio. I'm Matt Reed, and I'm joined today by Senate candidate Rubio himself. Mr. Rubio served as Speaker during the 2007-2008 legislative sessions. An attorney and former city commissioner from West Miami, he was first elected to the Florida House in 2000. He's married and a father of 4. Marco, your chief competitor for the Republican nominee is Governor Charlie Crist, and you've described yourself as a more conservative alternative to him. He describes himself as pro-life, pro-gun, and he has campaigned to lower property taxes in Florida. How are you more conservative than that?
Well, what I can tell you, I hate labels in politics. I'll accept the conservative label. I think that's where most Americans find themselves. I know what I believe in. I have a certain set of principles, and my principles are backed up by my record. You mentioned the issue of pro-life, which is important to a lot of people. I've been pro-life consistently. I believe that the essence of pro-life, if you say you're pro-life, you must be in favor of overturning Roe versus Wade. And there are people like Charlie Crist that are not in favor of overturning Roe versus Wade. So that's one example. But look, I don't walk around every day with some sort of list in my pocket that says, this is what conservatives believe in, therefore that's what I believe in. I have my principles. And if people want to describe my principles as conservative, I'll accept it. Quite frankly, I'll embrace it.
One of the issues that's big here in Florida, and it does get to the heart of the conservative issue, is space flight. We are the Space Coast after all. And we are looking at a potential loss of about 4,600 jobs in the next couple of years as the space shuttle fleet retires and we move on to new generation of craft. That puts us in a policy bind in which we'll be relying on the Russians to launch people and supplies to the station. The question for
Makes
you
you feel
is,
good, right?
do we support spending borrowed billions to keep the shuttle flying, or do we take our medicine and continue on the current path?
Well, twofold. Number one, I don't think those are the only choices. I think you can also say that space exploration is a priority to our country for a lot of different reasons. Reasons that people don't always recognize. I think you do in this region, but in other places, maybe not fully understood. Number one, space exploration and everything that goes into it develops all sorts of technologies that have applications outside of space exploration, technologies that have a commercial application and, more importantly, military applications. And that's the second component of this. I think that our supremacy in space is directly tied to our supremacy in national security. One of the things that made America the preeminent military power on the planet and have kept our homeland safe is our supremacy in space through the space program. We cannot afford to lose that or cede that to anyone in the world, no matter what the cost might be.
You said or wrote that if you were elected senator, you would have opposed new Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor. But in an article by you that I saw on the Politico website, you contrasted her achievement as a Hispanic with your outlook on her as a jurist. You wrote, quote, "I believe the greatest disservice we could offer the Hispanic community and the nation as a whole is to avoid a serious, principled discussion about the role of the judiciary. As Florida's first Hispanic Speaker of the House, my experience, like Sotomayor's, is a testament to the boundless promise that exists in our great land, where the son of a bartender and housekeeper who came from Cuba, without even a grasp of the English language, could rise to such heights." You want to elaborate on that and tell us where you were coming from in that?
Well, look, the bottom line is in America, our goal is equality of opportunity, not equality of results and not preferential treatment, but equality of opportunity. We want to make sure that the fact that you are of Hispanic origin does not prevent you from becoming a Supreme Court Justice or a United States Senator. And I believe clearly that's the case with Justice Sotomayor. She's been nominated. She has the academic credentials for her nomination. No one denies that. But now we move to phase 2. And phase 2 is, okay, we have equality of opportunity. Now is she the right person? And I think that to take someone of Hispanic origin and say, look, we're not going to have as high a standard for you as we would for somebody else because of the historic nature of your nomination or my candidacy, quite frankly, to lower the standard of review for someone is, I think, offensive. I would not want people to say, you're not qualified to be a U.S. Senator, but I'm willing to vote for you anyway because you're of Hispanic origin. And likewise, you're appointing someone to a lifetime job on the United States Supreme Court. That person, we need to understand where they stand and, more importantly, what their role, what their view of the judiciary is.
Okay. As you know, Florida's senators have been instrumental in the past in blocking offshore oil drilling here in Florida. And you said on your website, quote, "I support a comprehensive energy plan that encourages nuclear energy, exploration in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, and environmentally safe leasing of oil and natural gas fields on the outer continental shelf." Does that include Florida?
Yes.
What's your take?
Yeah, absolutely. And here's what I believe. I believe that our nation must have, at this time in our history, access to every single energy resource at our disposal in our lands. We cannot find ourselves in a position one day in this uncertain world where the sources of energy for our country, for our military, happens to be the people we're engaged in an armed conflict with. And that's why I think we can't take options off the table, including offshore drilling in Florida.
Do you think that it is a big solution or just a piece of a broader?
I think it's a piece of a broader solution. And I think that the piece of the broader solution is that in the short and midterm, we need to have available to us the full spectrum of energy options that make us independent. In the long term, I would hope and believe that the American innovator will create for America sources of energy that we can't even describe or imagine yet. I believe that because Americans have proven that if you can make money doing something, we do it better than anyone in the world. But we need time for that innovation to kick in. And so the same people that took cell phones that were once the size of a brick and turned it into the size of your hand with millions of functions that didn't once exist are the same people that, properly incentivized with enough time, will create sources of energy for our country that will make us independent and environmentally safer.
I want to go back to the pro-life issue because I sensed just a moment ago that you had some passion for that topic. On your website you said, "I am a pro-life," or "I am pro-life. As a state legislator, I supported various pieces of pro-life legislation that, among other things, would require doctors to perform ultrasounds before performing abortions, and another bill that would ban the use of taxpayer dollars to fund stem cell research." Let me just get a clarification from you on that. What do you think that the ultrasound bill would have achieved had it passed? Or did it pass?
It didn't pass in the Senate. The clear notion that there's a life inside of a womb, and here's what I believe. I believe our Declaration of Independence that says that all of us are endowed by our Creator with unalienable rights. And that means that if the source of your rights are your Creator, then the genesis of your rights are at your creation. And I believe that mothers do have rights, there's no doubt about it. But all of us as individuals, our rights end where other people's rights begin. And unborn children have rights that belong to them. And chief among those rights, according to the Declaration of Independence, is the right to life. And there's liberty and the pursuit of happiness, which you can't do if you don't have life. And I think that ultrasounds confirm the fact that there is a life, that there is a living, breathing human being inside the womb, and that's what an ultrasound would make clear. Not to mention, by the way, there are medical safety issues involved in an ultrasound as well.
On the stem cell issue, are you opposed to all stem cell research or simply embryonic stem cell
Embryonic.
research?
On the contrary, one of the things we've done with our children is umbilical cord stem cell. We have saved that from the birth of 2 of our children, and we pay, I don't know how much every year, they store it somewhere. God willing, we never have to use it. I think there have been great advances in adult stem cells and umbilical stem cells, but to create life simply for the purpose of ultimately trying to cure diseases is something that the government should not be involved in funding.
Let me get you just your answer to an open-ended question. You've watched what's happening with healthcare reform in Washington right now. Do you have a position? Should it not be reformed? Do you have specific ideas that you'd like to see?
Sure. I have a specific goal, and that is I want every American to be able to buy health insurance that makes sense for them. And that's really where the crux of the problem is. There are some cost issues that have to be dealt with through tort reform and electronic records, and I think there's some consensus around that. The other issue is a health insurance issue. And the fact is that we have about 20 million Americans without health care coverage in America. Some of them don't have health care because they're not going to pay $600 a month for health coverage because they're 25 years old and they never get sick. It makes no sense for them. I want to live in a country where every individual can buy individual health coverage that makes sense for them. If you're a healthy 25-year-old, that probably means a low premium with a higher deductible and a higher copayment and limited coverage on some things. But a vibrant private marketplace where individuals can buy health insurance independent of their job, so that you're not getting your health insurance from your job, you're buying it as a consumer.
Are there specific proposals that you've seen in the Senate or the Congress in general?
I think they're heading there.
That?
Not yet. I think they're heading there with some of the bills that are out there that create incentives for a private marketplace. But ultimately, a lot of it has to do with restrictions that governments put into place, whether it's certain mandates at the federal or state levels, or the inability to buy health care on a national level, not from the national government, but be able to buy from an insurance company in California, whereas now we're only limited to those that are offering policies in Florida, if you live in Florida. And that is, I think, some of the restrictions government has built into the system, which has made it difficult to create these alternative marketplaces. It was part of our 100 Ideas book. It's not some new idea I came up with last week. So,
talk about that a little bit. That was something that you did that was somewhat unique for Florida lawmakers. You had a statewide idea gathering, and then you printed a book. Tell us about that process.
We went around the state for about a year and did idea raisers. You know, it's a play on the word fundraiser. And instead of just raising money, we raised ideas from everyday people, asked them what they would do if they were in our position. Then we picked about 100 of them, put them in a book, printed the book, and then went out and made 100 of them. All 100 passed the Florida House. 57 of them became law. And I think you're right, it's unique in politics that people actually tell you, this is what I will do if you elect me, and then they actually do it. Accountability is something that's been missing in politics lately.
What were one of the things that passed from the idea raisers?
Well, there were a number of them. Our curriculum reforms, the DNA database for anyone who's arrested that commits a felony. Now you go into a DNA database so that we have felon data, not just your fingerprints, but we have your DNA. As I said about curriculum reform, that was important because our children are not learning what it takes to compete and succeed in the 21st century. And the curriculum reform helped accomplish that. You know, moving up the Florida primary, which was part of the 100 Ideas, that was an idea we came up with because it made Florida a prominent player in the national elections. Unfortunately, the Democrats didn't count Florida, but the Republicans did. And you can argue that Florida made McCain the nominee for the Republicans. There are a number of other issues that were in there. The healthcare marketplace that I just outlined to you is now a part of Florida law. We are creating in Florida an alternative healthcare marketplace that's based on the private market and that allows individuals to access plans that make sense for their individual needs.
I want to talk to you a bit about immigration reform, because I was surprised to see in a poll of Republican supervoters in one of our House districts, Republicans who are going to vote 9 out of 10 times, that they were far more concerned about immigration or illegal immigration than they were about education even. You said on your website that you were opposed to that immigration reform bill that was sponsored by John McCain and Kennedy. Also, however, by Lindsey Graham, our own Senator Mel Martinez. I understand the bill would have provided a path to citizenship for up to 20 million illegal immigrants, but it also would have increased border enforcement, funded 300 miles of vehicle barriers, 105 camera and radar towers, 20,000 more Border Patrol agents. Why did you oppose that? For the things you described first, not the things you described second.
Okay. I don't have a problem. The border security stuff's important. I'm glad it was in the bill. Unfortunately, the path to citizenship outlined in that bill is a path that basically told people who came into this country illegally, we understand you've been here long enough, and so we're going to let you, if you do these certain things, come in. And here's the problem: not that these people are bad people. These are children of God, and most of them, the vast majority, have come here because they're looking for work and they're looking to give their kids a better life. But the problem is that we have to have rule of law in this country. We have to, and if you grant citizenship or a path to citizenship to individuals or people who have entered this country illegally, you are sending a message that if you can enter this country illegally and you will stay here long enough, we will eventually allow you to stay permanently. And I think that's destructive to legal immigration, which is what I'm in favor of. I think immigration has always been a positive for America. Today, immigration, because of its unregulated nature, has turned into a negative for America. We need to once again make immigration a positive for America. That starts with border security and fixing our visa problem. It's followed up by creating a guest worker program that makes sense, and by fixing the inconsistencies and the inefficiencies that exist in our existing legal immigration process.
I want to talk a little bit about the stimulus bill. You know, Governor Christ became somewhat famous for campaigning for the $787 billion stimulus bill. Here in Brevard County, it did have an impact in that it saved or preserved several hundred teaching jobs, for example, in local schools. It has sped up some construction at Port Canaveral and on Interstate 95, as well as some military-based projects. You oppose the stimulus bill, on the other hand. Can you explain that?
Well, first of all, the jobs you outlined that were created are temporary. The money runs out next year, and then what do we do? Because the problem is that, first of all, the stimulus package embodies everything that is wrong in American politics today. Number one, it's based on short-term thinking. Basically, people sat around and say, okay, what can we do to make us look good for the next 12 months? We'll figure out the future later. That's too much of that in American politics. Number two, it spent money we don't have. These aren't tax dollars. These are money that we printed. This is money that we've borrowed. This is deficit money that's being spent. The third thing is it's based on the notion that somehow through spending, government can create permanent prosperity in the marketplace, and it can't. I wish it could. It's a lot easier to pass laws and it's a lot easier to spend money than it is to get up at 5:30 in the morning and go to work and run your business and sacrifice for 20 years to be successful. But that's what it takes to create jobs and opportunity in America. That's what it's always taken, not government. Jobs are not created by presidents or U.S. senators or governors. They're created by hardworking entrepreneurs who take risk with their money every day in pursuit of a dream, and they make it work. And the stimulus package embodies everything that's wrong with America today. And supporting the stimulus package, quite frankly, is outrageous for anybody who does believe in those principles but is willing to betray them for purposes of short-term political expediency.
Governor Crist also held a summit on climate change, I believe, down in Miami, and has supported some of the same kinds of initiatives that we saw to control smog and emissions and the like in California. What's your position? Well,
first of all, what Governor Crist supported, what Charlie Crist supported, was California-style mandates through executive order. He basically wanted to take what they do in California and impose it on Florida through executive order. We were able to stop that by superseding him with state action, which basically took the power to do that out of his hands and put it in the hands of the legislature, which of course blocked it this year because it would destroy our economy. Look, I'm all for energy independence. I'm all for energy innovation. And I believe that if we set long-term goals and incentivize the innovators in America, they will do that. They will create for us the innovations that we need to lower carbon emissions, to create alternative sources of energy that make us independent. But I think that will come as a result of innovators in the marketplace, not governors and presidents and Congress.
Okay, I'm thinking of a young, charismatic attorney with an ethnic-sounding name, somebody who was born in a tropical, somewhat exotic city. Someone whose father was foreign-born, is well-known within their metropolitan area, not well-known without it, and has burst onto the national political scene after a term, or not a term, but a good tenure in a state legislature. Do you think that that person should have to file documents to prove that they are 35 years old and a natural-born citizen in order to run for federal office, as our local representative Bill Posey has?
Well, I haven't read Congressman Posey's bill, and I have a lot of respect for Congressman Posey. I served with him 1 year in the Florida House and then during his time in the Senate. I'll say to you that here's how I handle that issue. That election's been certified. And I understand that to a lot of people it's an important issue, and I don't mean to be disrespectful to those folks who see that as an important issue. And it's a legitimate one, quite frankly. If they want to make that one, they're American citizens and voters. I just feel that America is facing challenges to everything that makes us special. Everything that has made America special and unique in our history is under attack, quite frankly, as a result of the actions taken by both political parties over the last 6 to 8 years. And if we don't focus on those issues and we don't get those issues solved, it isn't going to matter where your senators or presidents were born or all that kind of. This country will not be the same. Our children will inherit a diminished country. We need to stop that from happening. And to stop that from happening, we need genuine and articulate voices in Congress, in Washington, D.C., that can outline an alternative, not just an opposition, but an alternative to the direction that this country is being taken. And that's what I focused my campaign on, and I hope that that's what the conversations will be about over the next 12 months.
Got about a minute left. You mentioned in an interview on the radio here in Brevard County that sometimes you pass legislation and you don't have the results you were expecting, or it turns out to have been a bad decision. Can you name one example from your time in the legislature?
Yeah, I mean, there are a few. I think, we passed a bill in 2000 that the helmet law for motorcycles. That may seem like a small deal, but it's, I think, been a disaster for Florida in many respects. Some people don't like that. They still want to be able not to have to wear helmets on there. I think in hindsight, some of the reasons why that was passed should maybe be re-examined in the future. I don't know if that was a mistake. I don't think that the world ended because of it. Ultimately, people have a choice of what they want to do or not do. But I think that's one we would re-examine and look at differently. I think the other, and it's not me personally, but I think in general the legislature missed a tremendous opportunity to pass meaningful property tax reform. And had we passed meaningful property tax reform in Tallahassee, it wasn't the fault of the Florida House, by the way, who passed over 9 different bills that would have done that, but couldn't get the support of the Senate or Charlie Crist for meaningful property tax reform. Instead, what was passed was a cosmetic fix. It was called Amendment 1, and it has done nothing. Everyone's forgotten about it. It did nothing to stimulate our economy, and we are paying a tremendous price for it today.
Marco, thank you for coming in and joining us today.
Thank you.
Well, that's our program. We'll see you next week on WBCC and FloridaToday.com.